Hello, Savaging.
Welcome to the Pet Photographers Club with your hosts, Caitlin and Kirsty. Tune in as experts share their insights to help grow your business with higher sales, creative marketing, and kick-arse business strategies. Now on to the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 9, Episode 9 of the Pet Photographers Club podcast. We're here today with Michael Puck for a member spotlight interview. Michael has a really unique business model, so I'll let him, explain a little bit about it. But as soon as we heard about what he was doing with his business, we knew we had to get him onto the podcast because it is a completely different approach to setting up a business and selling artwork, and really very fascinating. I'm teasing it because I think that you'll be able to explain it probably better than I would, Michael. But yeah, how about just to start with, if you give a little bit of an introduction into who you are, and then we can dive into your fascinating business model.
Absolutely. And first of all, Caitlin and Kirsty, thank you so much for having me on. I'll be more than happy to explain. It's actually different on two levels. So let me dive into that a little bit. First of all, it's a nonprofit. And I decided for that business model about 5 years ago because I found this was the right approach to take based on what I wanted to accomplish. And I'm sure we'll get around to speak more closely to that. Secondly, I have over the last 2 years converted my target customer base 100% to businesses. So at this point in time, I'm selling dog wallet only to businesses. And here's maybe the most surprising aspect of that. It's to businesses that have absolutely nothing to do with dogs or animals in general.
I'm so excited to dive into it deeper, Michael, for sure. Do you want to backpedal just a minute and start a bit at the start and just give a brief history of, your photography career, I suppose. Have you been specializing in dogs since forever? Did you merge? Tell us a bit about that journey.
Yeah, be happy to. And I wouldn't even go as far as calling it a career because it's just a 5-year stint at this point in time. And it has been part-time the whole time. So I had a key experience when I was very young, 4 years old. I had a horrific boiling water accident, and during that accident, I burned both of my legs, ended up in the hospital for a number of weeks, and wasn't allowed to be visited because I had basically 2 open wounds. I came back out of the hospital based on my parents' description as a completely changed child. And I became a loner. I became very withdrawn from what was happening around me. That changed, 8 years later, when we finally got our first family dog. That changed because the relationship I was able to build with that dog helped me to be reintroduced to the environment around me. And I don't know what my mental health would look like today if that would not have happened back then. And so that's really where I drive most of my connection and passion for dogs to, because I had this really strong relationship with our first family dog. And ever since, I had the strong desire to give back, to help animal shelters, to donate money, to volunteer time. But it always felt like there was more that I could do. And when I realized some 5, close to 6 years ago that I could marry my passion for dogs with photography, which I just picked up around that time, that's when this whole business started. But it has been all along about dogs, and it has been 100% a nonprofit during the entire time.
So you started Canine Photo 5 years ago, is that right?
2016, yes.
And were you working as a photographer before then, or you launched?
No.
Amazing.
I was lucky holding the camera not upside down when taking pictures. So it was a steep learning curve. I would say I started exploring different camera models and probably upgraded 6 times in a year when I initially revisited my interest in cameras in 2014. And then it took 2 years before I officially started the nonprofit. But yeah, I had nothing. I had maybe a year's worth of high school experience at that point in time. And that was film, because I was in high school in the late 70s.
We wouldn't have known that. Now, did I read that you have done some formal training though in photography? So has that been since in the last few years?
Yeah, so I think it was along in 2014, the New York Institute of Photography is where I did some coursework. Nothing extensive. I think I did 2 6-month engagements there. That was just part-time. It was certainly helpful. I looked online, I participated in online courses. So I was trying to build up my skill level versus trying to do it all by trial and error. But in the end, it wasn't substantial by any means. And I go on record officially here to say, I'm not a great photographer. I'm at best an average photographer. And I'm saying that because I like for your audience to understand, in order to sell to businesses, you don't have to be the best photographer around. You have to have decent work. But I would say an average photography skill is perfectly sufficient to sell to businesses. Because that's one of the questions I get most frequently. You have to be really good when you sell large wallet collections to businesses. Not really. I think average is a very good description for what my photography looks like right now.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah.
Although I don't agree that your work is average, because I've just been scrolling to your website earlier today, and I have to say that your work is beautiful, but your point still stands for sure. But you should be proud of your work.
Kirsty, you're not helping my point here by saying I'm an average photographer.
I know.
You are making a really good point, Michael. I think a lot of photographers, when they're first starting out, get hung up on comparing themselves to other, or not even when they're just first starting out at any point, can get hung up on comparing themselves to other photographers out there. But it's important to remember that the average client really doesn't have the same bias and criticism of photography that we all have. So just good enough is good enough. There's so many other aspects that go into it. Now, when you started 5 years ago, did you set up from the get-go as a non-profit with the aim of working with businesses, or did you start with more of the usual working one-on-one with clients approach that most people have?
Yeah, so it wasn't officially a nonprofit, whereby 100% of the proceeds were still going back to shelters and rescues. It was just early last year when I officially put the seal on to be a 501c3, which is a designation in the United States that you're tax exempt, and then you can also call yourself a public charity. Before that, I have basically had arrangements with my customers to say, I do the photo session, I do your wall art, you give the money to the shelter directly or to the vet's office or wherever the money was needed, so that it didn't have to run through me from a taxation perspective. But from the very get-go, it was always 100% of everything that comes in. I never paid myself. I never bought equipment with the money that I was generating. That was all me paying for it out of my own pocket, because I wanted to make sure that I can maximize the impact financially on what the animals were receiving in the process.
Okay, so super fascinated. You definitely have us all intrigued. So let's get a bit of an overview of what happened. So start us from the minute either the phone calls or, the phone rings, or you make the phone ring. And it's, I'm assuming one of these businesses, but maybe you can start from there and take us right through until the end when there's artwork on their wall. What does that kind of process
Oh,
look
wow.
like?
Wow. How long is this show?
Okay, give us an overview for starters, and then we'll go in.
Let me give you a very specific example, because for me last year was proof of concept that I can sell exclusively to businesses. So what I ended up doing in March and April of last year, so that was just, if you remember back, the beginning of the pandemic, I looked at who do I know in town. I've been here for 20 years at this point in time. Who do I know and who can I call? Because I wanted to initially just run an idea by them and get their feedback. So I basically put a little 3-minute video together to say, this is what I'm thinking. Here's why I believe that dog wall art is super powerful in business environments. And I was just seeking input, and I reached out to warm contacts, even so I might not have spoken to them for 5 or 10 years. With some folks, I might have been in a Rotary Club before, others I knew from work, but they had moved on, but still lived in town. So I had 25 names, actually I had 50 names on my list. I ended up making 25 phone calls. And out of that, I was asking at the end of this brief, give me some feedback here, conversation. Do you know somebody who could be interested in dog wall art? And each person gave me 1 or 2 references. I reached out to the references. I basically said, hey, I just talked to such and such. I understand you know that individual. He thought you would be interested to hear what I wanted to talk to you about briefly. And 25 phone calls, including those, and that generated several customers that grossed $40,000 in wall art just for the businesses. And keep it in mind, this is me working Saturday, Sunday. During the week, I have a full-time job that I need to pay attention to. So you can say, if I would have had my entire week to dedicate towards that, if I would have spent more time making phone calls, it certainly could have been a significantly larger number, but that wasn't really the point, because I wanted to see if I can create the proof of concept that I can sell dog wall art to businesses completely unrelated to animals. But your question was bigger. So let me, once that initial conversation has occurred, I normally had either a follow-on conversation or an in-person meeting to say, let me explain to you why I believe that dog wall art is super powerful for businesses. And let me clarify, not every business is a great target for that. It should be businesses that focus heavily on one-on-one client or customer relationships. Because I'm sure both of you have a very intimate understanding of how positive of an impact dogs can have on people based on your own experience. And I think this is very relevant in the business environment. My day job is working in a function that's called human insights. So if you want to be technical, you can call me a people scientist. And as a people scientist, I'll look into understanding people, see what makes them tick, and then use that information to help businesses solve some of their biggest issues. Now, that background is super helpful to initially connect the dots between the business and dog photography, but it's absolutely not needed in order to present it to a business. I just connected the dots. I think that's kind of the benefit that I had, because I see both sides of the coin. But then it goes back to, if businesses have issues that they're dealing with, and dog wall art can address some of these issues very effectively, then I think there's a business case to make. And if I can present this in the right light to business owners, it should be a natural fit where they say, yeah, absolutely, that makes a ton of sense. There's more to it. I'll pause and see if you have any follow-on questions, and I'll dive in a little deeper.
So many already, and I do want you to dive into sort of, if you're happy to, kind of what this pitch was when you were calling the businesses. But before that, I just wanted to know that you were saying you're doing this only on weekends, which is incredibly impressive, especially because I feel like, and I'm sure the audience, part of our audience would at least as well, that there's a bit of a limit to that. Like, maybe I'm putting that self-block in, like, oh, well, I can't contact a business on a Saturday or a Sunday because they're a business and I've got to call them Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. But you obviously found a way around that. So were you emailing Monday to Friday instead? Were you calling on lunch breaks, or were you really calling a lawyer or a doctor's office or whoever you're calling on a Saturday afternoon?
Well, keep in mind, I was reaching out to individuals I knew or had a relationship with at some point in time. So calling them over the weekend wasn't a big deal.
Okay.
And so the initial conversation did occur over the weekend. Some might have occurred after hours, but I wasn't tied to the business hours simply because I knew the individuals. I might have sent emails to a few of them to say, hey, do you have any time? Is this email still good? Can I reach you here? I've used LinkedIn for a few just to track people down to say, hey, where are you right now? Can we talk? I have something really interesting and I'd like to get your feedback on. So that was really it. That was the gist of it. Some didn't respond. Some said, yeah, absolutely. When do you have time? Let's get together. So it's not that everyone was just immediately jumping on board and say, oh yeah, that sounds so cool. There were some that says, what? Businesses and what? And I wasn't necessarily pushing or pressuring them to understand or agree with what I had in mind. I was basically just waiting for their response, and then I put them in a bucket of, yeah, that might be a person I can talk to again, or maybe share something in more detail to get good feedback. And others, I said, was great catching up with you. Doesn't look like that dog wall art is anything that you would be interested in spending more time about. And then they said, yeah, not really, I'm not into that. And that's perfectly good, because you want to sort out initially who you can talk to and who you cannot talk to. In the end, it was 5 contacts that gave me all the business that kept me busy throughout the entire 2020. And so I talked to 25, I got 5 good contacts out of that. I caught up with several of my former colleagues and friends, which was nice, without that leading to anything. But they put me in touch. Either they had a need themselves, which there were a couple of them, or they knew somebody that they thought might be interested. And it was as simple as that. No salesy approach to it at all. Simply just having a conversation, sharing an idea, and genuinely asking them for feedback. What do you think about that? Is that something that you think makes sense? How does it resonate with you? And so it was a very low pressure discussion that I enjoyed, and I think most of them enjoyed it as well.
I love that. I think we're often too scared to ask for feedback when it's an idea that we're attached to. And it can be so valuable, as you've, I'm sure you've made changes according to the feedback you received, and you got more numbers of people to call because of asking that question, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I played it by ear. Well, I had a script, and the script was kind of written out and defined well, but I was playing it by ear as it fit or didn't fit. For example, when I was reaching out to the person they had referred me to, I initially made the reference to the point of contact, the mutual point of contact. And then I said fairly early on, probably within the first 30 seconds, this might sound a little awkward, so I positioned it like that. But let me ask you a question. How do you feel about dogs? And this came completely out of the blue. So they didn't know what the topic was all about. And then I finished that sentence by saying, I know this sounds really awkward coming from a guy with a thick German accent and receding hairline, even so they couldn't see me. And it completely neutralized any tension that was potentially there. And so we had a great conversation. Many of them were laughing. Most of them said, I absolutely love dogs. And so then I inquired tell me about your dogs. I'm curious. And so we started from there. And then I introduced a little later to say, by the way, what I'm doing is I'm putting dog wall art in business environments, because my research has found that it can have a tremendously positive impact on patients, on clients, on customers. And then I immediately asked, so does that sound like something that resonates with you, or are you more a cat or turtle gal or guy? Again, trying to keep it on the humorous side. And I had really, really good conversations, and people were excited about the idea of putting dog wall art in a bank, for example. The guy that I taught at the bank, at the biggest bank we have in town, he says, "Ooh, I need to present this to my manager." And so I sent him the video that I prepared, and he carried the message forward, turns out for them it wasn't good timing, but I have a new business contact with him that I touch base with every so frequently. And eventually they might come around and say, hey, we're redecorating. Tell me again about this dog wall art. Others, like I had a car dealership that I reached out to, and I had identified that as a potential point of contact because they always had dogs in the advertisement on TV. And I said, they probably know about the power of dogs. As it turns out, they had no clue, but they had a dog in all of the advertisement. And I reached out to the owner. I asked him, meaning not introduced, just cold basically by email, said, hey, I have an idea when it comes to your dog and dog wall art and how it can benefit your business. Do you mind if we connect for 10, 15 minutes by phone or in person? And he says, hey, that sounds intriguing. Let's connect. And so we met, and that 15-minute meeting that I asked for turned into an hour. He gave me a full tour through his new dealership, and he pointed at all the blank walls he had. He says, I need to do something with these walls, but I really don't know what to. And so yeah, it's like, oh, wow. And yeah, now he has a 18-piece wall art collection hanging in his dealership. And I talked to him yesterday again. And he says, it is amazing. Customers come in, they take selfies in front of the dog wall art because they're so excited about it. Most of the, not to stereotype, but most of the females that come in our dealership with their husband, the husband is normally the one buying the car, and the female feels really lost. We noticed that they have now something to focus on and to have conversations about, because dogs is something that many people can relate to very effectively. And it makes it more enjoyable for the females, or for the let's say it gender neutral, for the non-tech or car person to have something that they can look at, speak about, and have conversations about while their better half is buying a car. So yeah, I think they're super excited. And now they actually taking it a step further and asked me, can we share this with our customers and in particular business customers? We would love for them to benefit from that as well. And I said, yeah, no, we really don't want that.
No, please don't give me any more time. So whose dogs are in these wall art? Do the dogs belong to, say, the people who work at the dealership?
Yeah, great question, because while the dealership, just to take that as an example, they had one dog, but they didn't want to have that dog 18 times hanging on the walls. So I was proposing to him, well, let's do the following. Let's see if I can find people that own vintage cars of your brand, Ford in this particular case, that also have dogs. And so I put a model call out on Facebook and ask in the local community, hey, does anyone know of somebody who owns a vintage Ford anywhere from 1930 to at least 20 years old at this point in time that also has a super cute dog? And you wouldn't believe how my inbox or my Facebook page was blowing up with people sharing their cars and sharing their dogs. And so I basically did, I think, 6 or 7 photo sessions from people that the dealership didn't know that had both the dogs and the cars. And I created a gallery that had about 50 curated images for the owner to look through. And out of that, he selected 18 he wanted to hang into the dealership. And I sold several of the wall art that I created also to the individuals that offered their dogs to participate in the shoot. So that was the added benefit as well.
That's amazing. So you're open to, if the business needs it, doing quite commissioned conceptual images that match their specific business, rather than it just being an image library that you're.
Yeah, Caitlin, I had a single image with an old Ford and a dog when I pitched that to him. Mm-hmm. So I had nothing to draw from. I had nothing to show him. He just took it at face value that I would be able to create those images. So I didn't know if there were people that would be willing to participate, nor that they had cars and dogs. But yeah, I took 6 photo sessions. I had all the images that I needed. And now out of the 18, we have each combination of dog and car about twice. Some, I think we have 3 times in there with a good variety of perspectives, backgrounds, and all that good stuff.
And
so yeah,
are you,
it's beautiful.
are you always are you always shooting specifically for the business, or are you ever just like reusing images that you already have?
That's a great question. And if you don't mind, let me take a little bit of a bigger loop to answer that. Not that the loops before have been small. But for this year, so last year was the proof of concept to sell dog wallet to businesses, most of which I created for them, like for the dealership, or I did a financial planning office, and I ended up taking pictures of their employees' dogs. And that organization was super excited about that because their employees got really into it. They have now, I hung it up yesterday, so this is completely fresh, 14 pieces of wall art. The smallest is 24 by 36. And they have 14 of those in their offices, conference rooms, in the lobby, in the ops room, showing their own dogs. And again, I did 8 one-on-one photo sessions with the employees. I sold the business the set of 14 images, so that was one business transaction. And then I sold, I think out of the 8, I sold 5 individuals privately as well. So it was combined 27 pieces of wall art out of a single point of contact generated by making one phone call. And this is well into the 5 digits from an overall revenue perspective. So, but you were asking, the other piece I wanted to mention here. So that was proof of concept for last year. For this year, I'm working on something that can actually geographically expand the reach of this to put a global dog art gallery together. And that gallery was basically intended to serve as what the name suggests, a gallery that businesses can go into in order to select what they would like to have in their business environment without having to shoot specifically for that business. Because otherwise, I'm always the bottleneck in the process. And my capacity is limiting how much business I can generate. Now, the really exciting part of that, I will open that up to the best and rising stars in dog photography, invite individuals to participate in that, to contribute maybe 1, 2, 3 of their best images, because the proceeds out of that will also be used for the focus of the nonprofit. And there will be a royalty fee for the photographers as well.
That is a fantastic concept. Let's put a pin in that. We'll come back to that because I want to chat more about the nonprofit thing as well. I feel like we need like 3 different interviews with you. So talk us through, I don't think I have ever heard, I don't know about you, Kirsty, ever heard of a pet photographer set up as a nonprofit. Talk us through the thought process behind that and how that works, why you've chosen to go that way. It's really unusual, but very cool.
So I think I might want to start out by saying I love my day job, the one that's generating money for me. Working as a people scientist, my background is in human resources. I've spent 25 years in and supporting human resources. Before that, I was an officer in the German Air Force. So I didn't need in another source of income. And I really wanted to go back to my childhood experience, the bond that I had made with dogs, and contribute to the highest possible degree. That's the reason why I buy my own equipment. I buy everything other than cost of goods sold. That's something that's coming out of the profit, because that otherwise could get rather expensive if I pay for that myself as well. But since I have a job that I love, I didn't want this to be a competing interest. That said, I plan to retire in a couple of years, and at that point in time, I will pursue this full time, and then I will structure it slightly different. I will still leave it as a nonprofit, but probably also add a for-profit arm to it just to supplement my retirement. So I think it's just, for me, the best way to make the biggest impact on animals by having 100% of the proceeds go towards helping shelter and rescue dogs. And maybe that's a good point to share the vision statement for the nonprofit. So Canine Photo is the name of the nonprofit, and the vision is to artistically capture the unique personalities of 1 million dogs by 2030. So I set myself a 10-year horizon, and to showcase the benefits of the human-canine bond, because I believe this is something that can make a significant difference for the way we look at animals in general and dogs in particular, because I wanted to make sure that I drive a large impact on dogs, not just what I can do individually. And if you think about it, 1 million dogs, capturing the unique personalities of 1 million dogs, if I would do nothing else than taking pictures of a dog every day from now on, it would take me 2,700 years to accomplish that goal. You know, while I expect to live long, I don't think I'll get there. And and so that's the reason why I set this goal really with collaborating with others in mind. This could be a movement, meaning if dog photographers probably have become dog photographers because they love animals, they love dogs. And I think if 1,000 photographers join and work on this together, then it would take 2.7 years in order to capture 1 million dogs. And I think that is what I'm after, building a foundation that helps animals to be seen in a different light. Where I'm in the United States, it's considered the South of the United States, Tennessee, Florida, further down, Louisiana. Dogs are still being treated by many as property. And I'm sure you've seen it where you are. I'm sure Italy is not all that easy to handle from how dogs are being treated there either, or Spain for that matter. I
It's
think there's
mind-blowing after being in Australia, well, at least where I was in my limited view, I suppose, of Australia. I mean, it was pretty rare to see dogs mistreated. Definitely happens there, but it's pretty rare. Here, everywhere. It's horrifying. So yeah, I can definitely see this initiative having a very important place in many places of the world. Michael, that's for sure.
Well, business is all about making money. And if businesses can see the benefit of dog wall art in their environments, I think there is the opportunity to shift the general perception of how animals are being looked at. And dogs, since they're closest to us, I think are a great focal point initially, and I like to expand it. And on my bucket list is to get rid of puppy mills, to get rid of dog fighting, which is rampant in the area where I am, and just getting rid of these things because they become completely socially unacceptable. And so I'm looking at the bigger picture. I fully get it. This is not something I can do as an individual, but I do believe that businesses, where the money sits for the most part, if they see the benefits that dogs can provide, and we raise the level of awareness, that this is something that can make a substantial difference.
I love all of that. Is it a significant part of the quote unquote pitch to the businesses, and will it be going forward that not only is it beneficial for their clients and their employees in terms of, you know, health and the feel good factor of seeing dogs around them, but also that the actual process of working with you is supporting charities? Does that make a big part of the pitch?
It doesn't, because I don't lead with that. I tell them at the very end, once we have agreed to work together, I normally say, oh, by the way, I'm a nonprofit. And businesses love that, but it has not influenced the decision-making up front. They are interested because they see the benefits. And it's easy. Let me give you a little bit more detail on that. Organizations, businesses that are very receptive are those that rely on strong one-on-one relationships. So lawyers, financial advisors, insurance agents, doctors, car dealerships, consultants, graphic designers, hospitals, retirement homes, wherever this one-on-one relationship is key for their success, this is where Dog Wallet is well positioned. If you then can find a point of contact that is a dog lover, him or herself, it becomes a super easy conversation. And while most companies don't have a budget line that reads dog wall art, it's just a matter of starting out maybe with one room and having something that just gets them an opportunity to try it out. The financial office where I just put 14 images yesterday, when they initially heard about it, they were really excited, but they were skeptical. So they didn't go out and says, yeah, I want you to give us 14 pieces of wall art and I'll pay you $20,000 for it. They said, yeah, take a picture. We have one guy here who's our operations director. He's a really cute puppy. Take his pictures. So I went out, I met with him, I researched a nice location, and they came back. I came back with the pictures, sharing with them, and they were just blown out of the water. They said, yeah, we need more of those. Let's do 7 more of these. So it's sometimes you just have to prove it. And again, I'm really curious to see for them in particular, because they're managing money. Trust is one of the most important aspects for them in their business relationship. I already got an email late yesterday suggesting that they had received a ton of positive feedback based on the wall art. But I want to go back in a week, 2 weeks and say, hey, tell me what you hear. Give me the specific statements that your clients are making, because this is gold and this can be leveraged across the board for so many different businesses.
Mm-hmm. I love, Michael, that you've already broken down all the barriers that I can hear people saying, other photographers saying, oh, but I don't have time because I already work Monday to Friday and then I run this business on the side. So I don't have time for that. What you just said, like, no, I do this on a weekend, So definitely somebody could put, half a day, once a month even, or once a week or whatever they could into doing some, being part of this with you or doing something similar. My other thought was like, oh, what if if it was me, for example, would I be able to do it 100% voluntarily as you are? And then you've just said, doesn't matter, because you could still do a similar concept, not for profit, because that's not the reason that the businesses are going for it in the first place, although it's a fantastic part of it. And yeah, every kind of barrier I can hear people saying, you're like, oh, that's not a thing. Like, come on, just join me with this.
Let me tell you another one that might actually blow your mind. Doing a side-by-side comparison, attracting private dog owners as clients, which I've done in the past, the two of you are doing, is actually harder than attracting business customers. And I'll tell you why. Meaning, I'm not just making the statement and ask that you believe me. Business customers have pain points, and the pain points drive how effective they are in business. So one pain point, for example, is employee engagement. They need to have their employees engaged in order to provide great service, produce good products, all that good stuff. The other pain point is how quickly and how deeply can I develop relationships with prospects? For the financial planner, for example, if they have an initial discovery meeting with a prospect, it depends on the financial planner's ability to connect with that person outside the scope of the work that they're talking about, to build a personal relationship for that person to say, I like them, I'll go back, I'll make them my financial planner. So those are fundamental business needs. There is no fundamental business need for business owner, for a pet owner to have pictures of their pets hanging on their wall. It is in the end, meaning we're trying to describe it as you capture the essence of your dog beyond the dog's presence. So we're kind of allude to the fact that the dog might not be around for as long as the individual. And everyone understands that to be a universal truth. But it's still a nice to have versus something that they absolutely have to have. Businesses have to have strong relationships with customers. Businesses need to have trusting relationships. Businesses need to have engaged employees, because if they don't, the business results suffer, and in some cases can suffer greatly. So I actually sat down a couple of days ago, I did a pro and con list, a side-by-side comparison, and it is significantly easier because of that to attract business customers than to sell dog photography to dog owners. Now, some dog owners couldn't care less and they buy everything you offer. But on average, if you think about it, I had, including the financial planner office, for example, I had 8 individuals that were dog owners plus a business. So I had 9 customers. And I was dealing with 9 customers that generated 27 pieces of wall art out of a single point of contact. And I didn't have to invest a lot of time into marketing, into all that stuff that we normally do in order to keep my pipeline full with work. I actually had to slow down last year because I couldn't handle all the inquiries that I had. And I love that because even so marketing can be fun at times, I'd rather take pictures of dogs if I can choose. and I think with businesses, that's really the way that works. You have one point of contact and they might buy $15,000, $20,000 worth of images. And they might keep you occupied for a couple of months, especially if you do it like me on a part-time capacity.
Well, I guess the thing to remember is that with this point that you're making is that businesses will see a return on this financial investment. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? So it's much easier, generally speaking, for a business to swallow such a large expense because it's not a luxury, like we have to really push it to private clients. On that note, how do you go pricing this kind of thing? The same as you would as if they were private clients then?
No, completely different. Completely
okay.
different.
Are you happy to talk about it?
I'm an open book because I like for as many photographers, dog photographers as possible to pursue this. And I'll tell you quickly on that note, I've put together an e-course where I pour every learning into it and I make it available for free because I want others to really have no barriers in making this work, making this happen. Because for me, again, I'm coming from a nonprofit perspective. For me, it's the benefit of the dog, the shelter dogs, the rescue dogs, the way we look at dogs. That is what I want to influence. It's not about making money. And I'll share openly everything that I've learned. And that's the reason why I put that e-course together, because I'm part of a coaching group. And once they learned what I was doing, they were asking a lot of questions. I had to repeatedly answer the same questions. And I figured, let's put something together to make this a little bit more efficient to communicate that. So the swag file, for example, that I used to reach out to business customers is in there. The research that I did, I hired a researcher in Australia, for all places, in order to give me some insights into what have we so far documented how dogs impact us in a positive way. And so I funded that actually out of my own pocket. That's in there. Then there's I think I mentioned the 3-minute video that I use in order to empower somebody else to carry the message forward internally. That's in there as well. So I put really all the gems in there to say, take a look at this. There's really no reason why you couldn't do that. And I'm all about empowering others to tap into this huge, huge market of businesses needing dog wall art. And that's also the reason why I put that global dog art gallery together, because some might feel, my work isn't good enough. I can't really do this. But if you have 500 of the best images that you can get, it's easy to sell that stuff. And if you still get a commission on it, it's a foot in the door, right? And everyone has connections to businesses. It's just a matter of making a few phone calls and exploring if it resonates with them. Did I get us completely off?
No, that's great. Okay. I was wondering, do you mind, Michael, if we put a link to that e-course in the show notes for anyone that wants to have a look?
Yeah, it's actually, I have it ready, but not launched yet. It's ready by Sunday. So I'll provide you with it as soon as it is ready. And yeah, that's be more than happy to share that. I'm putting the final touches on that right now. Again, I'm doing everything after hours.
Yeah.
And so
I'm flabbergasted.
Quite as fast.
So we'll pop a link, guys, in the show notes if you head over to the petphotographersclub.com/podcast and just look up Michael Puck.
I might just get you to answer that question because I know that people are going to be listening and being like, hey, I didn't get the question answered before you wrap up about the pricing. If we can just
sorry.
No, no,
I
no.
knew,
You've got so much information in there, Michael, that you can share with us all. But I'll just to get an idea. I mean, we often there's such a range that different photographers charge for different things, and because this is for businesses, I'm quite interested to hear how you do it. So I am assuming they're paying per piece.
Kirsty, I knew you had asked something, but it slipped my aging mind. So yeah, let me get back to that. So super simple. I basically tell businesses, figure in about $1,500 per room or per wall. And the way I do that, if I do take pictures for them, and let's say they hire me for, let's call it one room, just to make it really simple. I have them pay me up front half of the $1,500. And if it's only one room and they want a photo session on top of that, I also have them pay for the photo session. So it would be $1,500 plus $250 for the photo session. That's what they pay me half of at the beginning. Then I go out to the photo session, share the images with them. And once they order the wall art, I basically send them a true up invoice. So if they order something that has a value of $1,500, they just would get basically half of what we initially agreed. If they want 5 images out of the one photo session and it costs a total of $5,000, then they would get a true up that covers all of the remaining cost. So I'm giving them a sense of $1,500 that gets you either a couple of smaller pieces or one larger piece. Depends on what your room layout looks like, how much wall space you have. But it's basically a wall art credit that they purchase and have available. And if they then want something that is more expensive, they have to pay more. If they order something that is less expensive, then I charge the second invoice slightly less to make up for that. The first half of the payment is non-refundable. So whatever they pay up front, I keep for the work, for the effort, for everything that has gone into it. And then I just basically tailor the invoice to what they order. If they order 3 or more rooms, I give them an additional $1,500 wall art credit on top of what they're paying. So 3 rooms, $4,500, but they get actually wall art credit for a total of $6,000. Then I have another break point if they order 5 and another one at 7. And so every time we get to a break point, they get an additional $1,500 in wall art credit. The reason I did that, and again, I've been working in corporate settings for 30 plus years at this point in time. I know how businesses operate. They want it simple, they want it straightforward, they don't want to have to jump through hoops to figure out what the whole thing will cost. And so if you just tell them up front, $1,500 per wall or per room, depending on the size of the wall and the size of the room, that gives them a really good idea to plan. And if they have 3 rooms they want wall art for, makes it really easy to understand. It costs them $4,500, but they actually get wall art credit for $6,000. And
That's such a great structure. It totally makes sense that for businesses that would work so well. Do you have any businesses that in the beginning say like, yeah, well, we've got 10 rooms, so we're going to spend 15,000, or do they all think in the start, oh, we're just going to do one wall?
The car dealership, and there are others, I shouldn't just reference those 2, but they are most recent in mind. The car dealership, they signed up immediately for 18 pieces of wall art. I don't know what convinced them, but they were in the process of opening up the dealership. They had 2 walls that had nothing on it, huge walls. And so they said, yeah, we need it now, let's get started. And sometimes that happens if they have that need. Another customer of mine has an insurance agency. She had 1 wall that was full with about 15 pictures. It was overwhelming. And I said, you really have no room for me to hang anything. Why do you want me to take pictures? Oh, she said, oh yeah, I'll take all this other stuff off once I have yours. It was a 40 by 60 canvas. And it's the only piece hanging on that wall right now. It shows her with 4 or 4 Yorkies. And she sent me, probably 3 weeks after I put this up, she sent me a daily email to say, I just love this picture. And you wouldn't believe the responses I'm getting from my customers. Sometimes it's one. She spent $5,000. Oh yeah, the other piece I should mention. My sales average prior to converting over to only businesses was around $1,500, which is not great, but meaning it's a starting point. It has jumped last year without me changing anything but working with businesses to $7,500, simply because they have more need, more desire, more volume, more wall space. And I don't mind that.
Sure not. Do you foresee or do you worry about if you go more down the route of the library building, that kind of thing, that there would be a little less value in the eyes of the businesses because it's not custom wall art, or you don't think that'll play into?
I don't think that will play in, because in the end, for the car dealership, it wasn't custom wall up either. Think about medical settings for a minute. I sent a proposal last year to a local children's hospital. They have 69 patient rooms. I was proposing one image for each of the rooms, which basically would made it, well, it made it a $98,000 business opportunity. It was at the early stages of COVID, so they said, love the idea, not right now. they had their hands full. They wouldn't need custom images. They have a high volume requirement, but they don't necessarily have the need for custom. Now you could invite maybe their 5 biggest donors, and you can offer them photo sessions to make up some of the images. But quite honestly, they might decide we want only 5 images, and those 5 images will be spread out across 69 patient rooms. They might not want a different image for each room. And I think once you understand those type of dynamics, because they're all about decor and fitting together and whatever they already have decor-wise, and if you come up with 69 different images, they probably have their hair on fire because of that. So sometimes it is more effective not to have custom or variety, but to have one image and make a pitch to say, this is something that could have a tremendous impact on your patients, because research actually suggests that physical and mental healing is accelerated if patients look at dogs and dog photography. It's basically an extension of the therapy dog that's coming in for 5 minutes a day, but now you can have that same or similar impact all day round. And you put it in that context, you say, oh yeah, that makes sense. Hotels is another one. They don't necessarily want custom artwork.
I was just about to ask you, like, or say a similar thing, like, it reminds me of hotels. It doesn't matter what room you go into. Usually in a big hotel, they only have 5 different types of artwork in the whole hotel, in all the different rooms, and what you're saying about the hospitals or anywhere else that's high volume, it makes sense that it's the same thing, because hopefully and thankfully, most kids don't, if it's a children's hospital, don't go into every single room, so they don't know that it's the same image. But even if it is the same image and they see it, it would almost be like something familiar, and you could use it to your advantage, which it sounds, or not your advantage, I shouldn't say, but as part of your proposal to them, I imagine that you use that as a positive, that it's something familiar. Oh my goodness, Michael, I could talk about this for another 3 hours. These member chats are not supposed to go for an hour, so I'm like, oh no, we should wrap up. But honestly, could ask you so much more. Did you have anything you wanted to add before we actually do wrap up and let you get on with your day?
So I would, just to reiterate, the e-course is a free resource. I'll get to the link as soon as I have straightened out all my IT background on making this available. I really encourage individuals to think about this and not dismiss it, to say, yeah, no, business, I couldn't do business. I struggle doing private dog owners. Business is a completely different league. I think it is actually easier. And what I put in that e-course, I believe, gives individuals really a good set of guardrails to go through this, to be very comfortable in the process, know what to say, know when to say it, And I think your audience will be super excited to see what type of response is coming back. So I just encourage everyone. And in addition to that, again, I'm just 2 years into this. And last year was the first year that I've done businesses exclusively. I encourage everyone to reach out to me on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, email, if you want to pass that on, because I love to hear what roadblocks you're hitting, what type of concerns you have, because I would love to help. I would love to give you my insights that I've gained so far to see if we cannot truly make this a movement to help shelter and rescue animals, because that's at the heart of everything that I do, helping animals. And I believe if we can get 1,000 photographers, pet photographers on the same page, I think what we can accomplish is limitless, to put it this way.
I don't think it will be difficult for you to rally the troops, so to say. It's a very inspiring story that you've put forward. And I think that, as you've already said, most of us go into this because we adore dogs, and most of us are already doing our own volunteer things. So to have a movement altogether that we can contribute to in a little way, it doesn't necessarily have to be a huge contribution that everyone is putting forward, but if we're all getting together in just a little way, I love the 1 million dogs concept. So we will have links to all of the things that Michael has mentioned in this episode in the show notes if you head over to the petphotographersclub.com/podcast. I'm going to edit. I think we'll probably release this earlier. So I'll edit this bit of the podcast for whatever episode it's actually going to be. But yeah, thank you so much, Michael, for coming on. That was just a little bit mind-blowing, to be perfectly honest. And we're so appreciative, very excited.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. It was intended to be mind-blowing. I hope it to be mind-blowing, because it's meaning I'm still trying to get my arms around how big this could be, knowing how many businesses are out there and what needs they have.
Mm-hmm.
So again, thank you for the opportunity. This was fun. I hope I didn't talk too much or didn't throw too much at you. But again, thank you. This was a ton of fun.
No, thank you, Michael. And we're going to talk more, definitely, because I'm just so excited about what you're doing. Thank you for sharing, and have a really good afternoon.
Thanks.
You too. Thank you so much.